hindi siya talaga part ng plan for a lot of organizations na hindi tayo aware. And so maybe now, the listeners out there, no?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can convince you if you're a decision maker in your organization, or you can have influence to your bosses and you know, however it goes, the higher up. Persuade them, at least let them know na parang, yeah, we all have this responsibility. We just have this, you know, single planet we all share. And if as much as possible, we can also incorporate the environmental consciousness in our practices. That'll be good.
Welcome back sa another episode ng Kaka-Computer, and in today we're gonna talk about an interesting topic that usually is not really highlighted when it comes to tech information, which is about sustainable IT practices. So as someone who I have the role titled Sustaining Engineer, this is an interesting topic because as someone who has that title of the role, if you Google what a sustaining engineer is, it's mostly focusing on the design part of being able to make sure our systems are up to date, and is something that from the word sustainable. But today we want to highlight the importance of not only being able to improve those types of system, but also the environmental factor that it can bring, yung the impact of these new advancements in technology. So with that being said, as tech professionals, guys, what are your observations when it comes to the environmental impact on what you're doing in your day-to-day basis as tech professionals? Diba? Parang,
Yeah.
it's an eye-opening episode kasi that's why before starting this podcast, we were like also curious na this is something that is not being discussed that much kasi talaga when it comes to the environmental concerns. And it's ironic because when you look around, kahit hindi ka tech people, we're always in our phones, where some people are so attuned to buy the latest hardware or latest software, which affects the environment. Kahit hindi mo naman kailangan ng bagong iPhone, 'di ba? Fully paid, 'di ba? Yung COD mo na lang yung phone mo. You don't, it's not practical in that sense, but of course people want the new tech, the new trends, the new features. So that's why this is an important episode that we should be discussing about. Do you guys have any observations?
I think from my end, I could relate it siguro sa since infrastructure normally as a software development company, we build a lot of software.
Yeah.
Then normally we would deploy them to like an infrastructure like AWS, GCP, or Azure. And I think I could relate yung kung gaano kalaki yung capacity ng server mo, parang it could also impact the environment, di ba?
Yes.
So at the same time yung cost. So I think one of the practice na we're doing sa company is to always do like cost optimization, making sure na optimize yung mga applications that we deploy, so that parang you reduce yung cost, at the same time you reduce rin yung impact yung environmental impact ng software na binuild mo sa environment. I hope it helps.
It does,
and I think if everyone's doing it, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, I know we started off with this topic, you know, kind of scratching our heads, thinking, like, you know, what are we supposed to be talking about? But, personally, you know, I think some of the topics we've touched earlier about, you know, compliance and regulation, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Much more for environmental impact. It's like nobody really thinks about it that much. I mean, honestly, and we should be. So, you mentioned now, even though maybe it's not really very directly transparent to us, you know, what we do in IT vis-a-vis how it impacts the environment, but there are proxies. When you said optimization, definitely, I guess it makes a lot of common sense, diba? Na pag sabi mo, okay, you reduce your consumption, you reduce your resources, you reduce your potential impact. Long story short, there are things we may or may not be aware of that are doing an environment, but at least if you are trying your best to really optimize, that's already a big deal in terms of reducing the environmental impact on whatever it is that you do. But yeah, I'm just gonna stop there. I know we'll just jump off on the next point later. But definitely, we're all in agreement na parang wala naman talaga nag-iisip ng environmental impact on its own, but we should be. Yeah. What do you say?
Parang ang naisip ko sa environmental impact sa IT is parang if familiar kayo sa mga website na parang meron silang carbon footprint checker, ganyan. So
Yeah.
parang connected pa rin siya dun sa optimization na parang papasok dun sa how you approach developing your applications, parang how you consider yung allocation of resources, like parang example auto scaling, parang it's one way of um, being aware of yung consumption sa mga IT resources.
Yeah, with speaking of IT resources, it's good that we have virtual machines. At the same time, sometimes when people locally host their virtual machines, dun din nagkakaroon ng resource concern in such a way that as someone working for a restaurant technology company, so our products are point of sale systems, both software and hardware, all of us are remote work na. So we do have labs, pero sayang siya sa resources kasi it's not being used as much. Unlike, for example, when you use Microsoft Azure, you can just have your virtual machine set up there. But yun lang yung downside if you are still in an organization or you have this company, whether or not you're deciding mag-host na lang ba ako ng sarili kong virtual machine or should I acquire a service like Microsoft Azure, that's something you have to consider is malulugi ka if you're gonna host virtual machines and then yung physical hardware hindi naman siya masyado nagagamit. So that's something that you can weigh in as well. That's something na personally na-observe ko sa amin as someone who is working with a lot of point of sale systems is that naaalikabukan lang talaga, to be honest, yung hardware po namin. Kasi we work with not only point of sale systems, printers, payment devices, monitors. So nasasayang siya. And it's definitely a huge environmental concern when it comes to sustainability and at the same time waste management. Kasi if you are working with hardware or software that needs to be updated, syempre, it's not always just the software that needs to be updated, like our phones, for example. You, di ba, at a certain point, I'm an Android user, at a certain point, you know you need to switch your phone if you're not able to get the latest update anymore. That's an indicator for you to switch to a new phone. So, yun yung other example of replacing hardware, replacing software, those things that we need to be honestly more aware of na ganito pala yung impact pag ginamit ko yung cellphone ko, pwede pa naman pero gusto ko na bumili ng bagong iPhone. So, yun yung example niya. But for us IT professionals, I'm also curious to pick your brains then with the speakers that I have here in the room is based on your perspective, like in the IT departments, how do you usually, may sinasabi ka kanina with may carbon
Tracker, yeah.
tracker sila. But for you guys, how do you measure and track yung environmental impact sa inyo naman?
I think sa amin, we're not that yet,
Yeah, I think for a lot of organizations, a lot of
Yeah.
IT,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
transparent.
Yeah.
I mean, opaque pala. Kasi
Yeah.
transparent, you can see it. Kaya din sinabi mo, di ba, na meron ka lang proxy. As a proxy for environmental impact, you associate your resource consumption and you try to optimize. Which I guess, in the grand scheme of things nga if you can make the most value of whatever it is that you're investing on and you minimize acquiring new stuff, making more waste, then that's already a way for you to reduce your environmental impact. And from the very get-go din, sabi ko nga,
White Cloak Technologies is a custom software development company. They build mobile and web applications. They work with leading brands in banking and real estate. Visit their website at www.whitecloak.com to know more.
sabi ko nga, hindi siya talaga part ng plan for a lot of organizations na hindi tayo aware. And so maybe now, the listeners out there, no?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can convince you if you're a decision maker in your organization, or you can have influence to your bosses and however it goes, the higher up. Persuade them, at least let them know na parang, we all have this responsibility. We just have this, single planet we all share. And if as much as possible, we can also incorporate environmental consciousness in our practices, that would be good. And it doesn't really take a lot. Again, optimization is already one huge sort of step in the right direction towards sustainability. And then honestly, that's just where I'm stopping myself to.
Yeah.
Like, how do you really measure? How do you know? Like
Yeah,
beyond that.
I think to be honest as well is that in this episode we won't be really able to give you guys an answer to this because this episode is actually a starting call for everyone because at the end of the day it all starts with awareness. We won't be able to give a solution without understanding and knowing the problem first. So this in our episode topic sustainable IT practices, it's always good to be well informed first on what the problem really is, and then from there, which is we already know that not all organizations really do consider the environmental impact that their services bring. So that's why it's important to start with that first. So this would be your call to action, like what is sustainable technology, what is the environmental impact when it comes to working with tech, and at the same time, once we are well informed in that part, that's the time we're gonna specify what specific things we wanna help reduce when it comes to the environmental impact, and then from there, that will be a great indicator for us to be able to plan and think of sustainable ways and to be able to avoid that, and not really avoid but reduce, because at the end of the day we cannot totally remove all, like say for example like hardware stuff. So it's more on reducing than eliminating. So that's how we would want this your guys' takeaway in this episode is to really help you guys share the awareness that there is such a thing as sustainable technology, and looking forward for organizations and businesses to be able to also consider this moving forward with their business, like decision making, the environmental impact that it can bring.
Yeah. I do remember large companies like Apple,
Yes.
Google, it's really a big initiative within their company to reduce their carbon footprint. And normally, pag may mga conference sila, di ba?
Yes.
WWDC, Google I/O, parang merong portion doon na ina-announce nila yung how much they've reduced so far. I think sa Apple nga parang they're aiming na lahat ng parts nung kasi ng iPhone should be recyclable. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I
And
think those
they're-
are good example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's in some parts of the world, yung meron ng parang pasok na si regulation, 'di ba? Yung net zero initiative, even yung United Nations has that
Yes.
sort of
Yeah.
zero target by 2030.
Yeah,
and
they call that SDGs or Sustainable Development
yes,
Goals.
sustainable development
Yes.
goals.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to all the other sort of compliance stuff na if you put a policy around it and then you
Yeah.
put some framework around it, whether legal or national or otherwise, it becomes a bit more evident. Unfortunately, sa atin, dito sa Pilipinas, wala masyado.
Yeah.
Pero it doesn't mean na parang we can adapt what is being implemented elsewhere kasi sooner or later we will have to, right? So, and I think yung ibang mga environmental stuff practice doesn't really necessarily evolve around yung IT development. Kagaya ng sinabi kanina, di ba? Yung medyo tangent ngayon na dahil nasa work from home tayo, marami nang nagpapagrab, marami nang nagpapadeliver, so ang daming mga waste from yung packaged food and deliveries. And I guess by extension, beyond your professional practice, even in your day-to-day,
Yeah.
there's going to be a significant impact then if you try to really minimize your waste and also be a bit more environmentally conscious in what you do, and that should go a long way.
Yeah, and if you are listening or watching and you already know for a fact that your organization or your company is not practicing sustainable technology, this is also a good indicator for you na people might think, oh, hindi naman programmer ako, hindi ko naman scope yan, hindi ko naman role yan na mag-isip-isip ng environmental impact. But consider that the organization or the business doesn't have a dedicated team yet to be able to really think and make solutions for those types of things. And tulad nga din ng sinabi na it also goes within us personally to apply these types of environmental practices and awareness. So it's important to be able to share the knowledge, give awareness, and then from there, that's where the discussion for solution making comes in. So this is our episode of sustainable IT practices. Do you guys have any other takeaway advices that you can give to our audience?
Yeah, I think to end is for me it's an exciting times.
Yes.
More companies are adapting, um, like I think considering their impact on the environment. And I've seen companies like moving their the data center into like
The cloud.
renewable
cloud,
energy
yeah.
powered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think in our own ways, Ren,
Yes, it
we
starts
kind of
within us. Yeah.
we kind of do that. Patay mo yung aircon kapag
Oh,
wala
kasi
tao sa
lalabas daw
bahay.
yung aircon. But
Patay
yeah.
mo ilaw sa umaga. So I think yeah, it's there are a lot of examples out there wherein if we became more conscious about it, we'll be able to at least contribute. Yeah.
Sa ngayon parang parang yung mga gantong sustainable iwas parang more on not sure if mas aware lang sila or mas conscious lang yung mga parang big companies but parang ano pa siya parang niche or parang tawag doon. So hopefully parang hindi lang siya parang mag-end sa ganun, parang hopefully hindi siya maging excuse for maybe other parang startups or scaling companies to also be parang mas maging aware din or mas maging conscious din when it comes to parang managing their resources.
Yes, and definitely, if organizations or businesses considered the environmental impact, this would actually make them stand out. Kasi their stakeholders or buyers or clients nila would be impressed na, oh, you're caring for the environment. So, I'm interested to know or learn more about your service or your product. So, ayun guys, we're looking straight in the camera right now. Tas sa inyo na po ang baton on how we're gonna advocate for awareness when it comes to sustainable IT practices. Thank you for your time, guys, and looking forward to seeing you again in the next episode.